The question about the use of earnouts in cross-border deals. Are sellers willing to accept earnouts?
I would say that in domestic deals, it's much more likely. It's much more likely when there's a good understanding between the two counterparties, and there's a much better chance of having one when you have a very clear risk or opportunities that you're trying to bridge through. So a known synergy that the buyer doesn't want to pay for and the seller needs to get. And so those types of dynamics, I think, get into a transaction quite often. Once we start getting cross-border or cross-border public company, I think it's next to nil that we see those transactions.
Yeah, I would say in cross-border private deals, we see a fair number of them, and from my perspective, they are basically to bridge basically disagreement about valuation.
Right.
And so it's a way of saying, okay, well, if you think that that's going to occur, then we'll pay you for it, but we have to see the performance before we're willing to ante up. And but in the public markets, I don't see something like that typically.
Yeah, I think earnouts are in a deal environment like we saw last year, where you have a pretty wide gap in bid-ask spreads. Earnouts and contingent value rights are logical approaches to consider, but in the international environment, I think there's also in certain countries a kind of a cultural rejection to the notion of an earnout, because a lot of deal making is based on trust and relationship, and so so we've seen that on a couple of transactions where it was it sort of was created a difficult negotiating environment when the topic of an earnout was broached. But they're absolutely something that every deal maker should have in their toolbox.
From a lawyer's perspective, if you say earnout cross-border, the next topic is going to be force majeure, and force majeure has its own life outside of the U.S. So it becomes a very complicated discussion. But I've seen a number of these deals.